So just a reminder before we begin to use
Some of the meetings, some of the people you don't hear at all.
yeah, and you can't hear it because I won't pick up the sound, so.
Ryan, we're sort of soft-spoken.
Thank you.
Next week, over here, let's give him a little room. Big guy.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. This is the Measure J Commission meeting for December 18, 2019. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here?
Vice Chair Craig,
Here.
Commissioner Fuder,
Here.
Chair Gazan,
Here.
Commissioner Gray,
Here.
Commissioner LaBranch,
Here.
Commissioner Lass,
Here.
Commissioner Robin,
Here.
Commissioner Soto. We have a quorum.
If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, do we have a motion to accept today's agenda? Okay, excellent. And motions to approve last month's November 21 minutes.
I move.
Second.
Great, thank you. This time has been reserved for public comment. I will save reading about it, seeing it doesn't appear to be, no one is here for public comment. Well, welcome everybody to our optional December meeting and happy holidays. Was David thinking about popping in? So we'll get to him. We'll just kind of move right to the finance director's report. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, how are you? Okay, so I apologize for this not being included in the packet. I don't know how we missed this, but it is here today. If you look at the bottom, revenues, they are 1.2 million over the prior year, which means we're doing really good. Also included, I'm not sure if you had received this package here, which is called Measure J Reconciliation. And we're trying to be as transparent and give you as much information as possible. So one of the reports that you generally receive is a report on the total to date project spent. This one here tells you, gives you the budget amount and what was spent and what your new budget is. So at the end of the fiscal year, our audit's just about completed. I'm estimating that we're going to have unscheduled projects of $4.3 million. That's about down the middle of your page here to the right. And the reason for that is we did some cleanup, and at the carryover time, we went through the projects, and if they were completed, we moved any money that we did not need at that time into the unscheduled projects. Also, we had a budget for $2 million for the Uptown Park structure. That is now, the $2 million is now gone to unfunded because the Andes is now going to find other sources of funding rather than us having to pay for that $2 million. So that now has moved up into your unscheduled capital projects. I would recommend not doing anything today regarding this unscheduled projects. I will come back when the audit is final, which should be in a week or two, so the next meeting. But I would kind of hope that we can maybe just hold on to this until budget time and figure out what do we actually really need. Instead of breaking all these projects into some small projects at this time, we have a lot of projects that haven't been completed to date. So I would recommend holding this into reserve when we regroup again before we go to take the next budget back and then decide what are the most important projects we want. Does anybody have any questions at this time? So hopefully, if you have any questions on this new report that I provided, let me know. But this will give you the balances of unspent funds at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, if no questions, I'm happy to move us to the city manager's report. Dr. Reddy,
Hello, Mr.
welcome.
Chairman. Good afternoon. Sorry for being late. You're in good hands with the finance director. Anyway, Mr. Chairman and members of the Measure J Commission, I just wanted to, I haven't been here in a while. I needed to come and join you just to see if there's anything I can do to assist or answer any questions. I know staff has been ministering to your needs, and I think we sort of have things moving in a way that's positive. Though the one thing I think you wanted to talk about a citywide mailing. That was one of the things, and I don't know if you want to talk about that now or later on the agenda, but that's certainly something that's probably long overdue, a mailing to every household in the city, basically, letting everyone know all the things we've been doing with Measure J over the years, and then potentially all the upcoming. But I think that would be a letter and or flyer. We would go and get it designed basically based on your input. And then we would get that sent out, I think, to every household would be very appropriate. And then in addition to that, we would do all the social media parts. So that was the one thing I do want to commit to and get moving for you. And other than that, the other thing I did want to let you know, you had I think you actually budgeted money for the library with regard to the J.C. Fry building. So the Library Commission wants to go forward with that, and you were okay with it. It was a big number. It was roughly what, about 100,000, 400,000, and half for the library, half for the Fry building. What we need to do is, it didn't go to council. It's not on the agenda this week. We need to get the subcommittee back together because the council had some questions. Well, what actually we're doing with the library and figuring out where that money is coming from before they go forward with that. So it's not saying they said no in any way. It's just we got to get our arms around what we're doing with the main library. So I hope to have the subcommittee back together in early January. As you know, this recommendation was made to stay in Sunrise Park. Then they'd say, well, what about potentially having someone like Mark Rios Clemente Design, who did the downtown park, take a look at Sunrise Park and the library, sort of like a master plan. And the other thing that in his proposal was, well, are you going to expand the current library or build a new one next to it? And those are all the kinds of decisions that have to be made. So that being said, the subcommittee hopefully will be back together in early January to mid-January. We have to get those discussions restarted, and then I think the Fry building needs to be a very important component of that. So those are the two things that I wanted to update you on, Mr. Chairman.
Great, and if your time is limited,
No,
we
no,
can,
I'm fine. Go
are
ahead.
you sure? Because we
Yeah.
can discuss the mailer.
Well, I'm
Would
good till
you-
4:30 is my next meeting, so I'm happy to
Okay, well,
hang
let's,
with you.
we might as well do that now. At least that pertains to what will come from us, and I guess what would come out of the city and budget-wise, if this is on, the question will be whether it comes out of our Measure J budget or the city budget.
Do you have a preference?
Well, we would-
I mean, the easy answer is,
prefer,
the easy answer
for
is-
the city to pony up for a mailer, because that would, I mean, it would more than suck up our annual budget. We just have a very little pot to,
what's the budget? Actually, the finance director, Ms. Nancy, has actually a great idea. Have you shared that with them?
Not yet.
She really found you some money on the audit. Go ahead.
So going back to this page here, on the top section, you have Measure J special audit, and you have $43,000 budgeted for your audit. This audit that we have this year, I talked the auditors into doing it for $3,500. $3,500.
compared to 43,000.
I don't know why the budget was 43. It's been on the books for a while as 43. So I figured maybe we can, since I got such a bargain deal, maybe we can take 15 from that budget and move it up towards your communication and use that for future mailings, if that would be.
You can keep negotiating for us. That's
Okay,
really
all
good.
right. Okay, so if you would like us to do that, just let me know, and I can move the 15,000 from the audit, which we don't need, up into your marketing, and you can use that for your mailings.
And I'm going to hand this off to the communications subcommittee, because they are the ones that have been meeting on that, and I think Commissioner Gray has a question.
Yeah, I do. I'm going to quickly go back, but maybe Ariana knows too, or somebody knows, but I believed at our last meeting or the meeting before that, we already allocated our communication budget. So we really don't have that $9,000 to reallocate. I mean, we've already voted what we're going to do with it. So we would need additional money. So the $15,000, if that could be moved, then we don't have to go back but some of the things we've already paid for, so I think it would be pretty hard to go back and get the money back. So we didn't really have the money for a mass mailer in this year's budget because we had already allocated the $10,000 budget.
And to clarify for you, David, it was remaking signs. We're doing some sidewalk stamps, some medallions that will go into walls of places that will, it's a small medallion. There were a few other things, I think some feather banners for the picnic, as well as a few other little miscellaneous things. And that pretty much soaked up this year's budget. And when I was referring to our budget, I was, of course, thinking of next year. But however, we would love to keep that open for marketing purposes. So, yeah, the
Well,
15,000 that Nancy's uncovered might be helpful. Commissioner Craig.
David, there used to be a mailer that had your report to the public, a mass mailer. Do we still have that? Do you still do that?
Well, yes, that's going to go, there's one more mailer to come. It goes 3 times a year. That's a great forum to do this, but I was thinking that your mailer, you'd probably want a separate one too. So we should do both.
Okay, I
We
just
should do
was
both.
asking. All right.
We can do a smaller version in it's a newsletter we have with the chamber, so we could do a condensed version there and then do your letter separately.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lass.
Dr. Reddy, thank you very much for being here and for your ongoing support of our efforts to try to make this a little, the mission of the Measure J Commission a little more widely understood. As perhaps you know, we have been discussing the idea of a citywide mailer at the Communications Committee, and what we were hoping was that we might be able to do something sometime in the first quarter so that we make sure we hit all of the people who are in town seasonally. And I just wanted to commit the Communications Committee to working with the designer. We do have, with Ariana's help, an early example that we put together for PS1. but I think it could benefit from some professional design work and maybe a little more work on sort of sharpening our message. For PS1, there was a lot more project-specific numbers because that's a group that really sort of focuses on a street-by-street basis, whereas a general mailer is probably have a little different focus. But assuming we can move some of the money from this audit, that would be great, because the 10,000 that was allocated for a communications budget by the city council, as you've already heard, is pretty much allocated. And in fact, I have some examples to pass around. So if we can make that happen,
mailer until we know fully how to do that, or we want to do a mailer without really asking for a lot of input and just telling people what we've done. Sort of throwing that out there.
Just to underscore Commissioner Bernstein's comments, that the pivot point we were considering is to what extent a mailer should be engagement through visibility versus engagement for call to participate and look ahead, probably 2 cycles out of funding, and how that works on a calendar basis. So as you're hearing, there's probably a lot of legwork involved in re-engaging with the community to specifically promote their ideas versus what we've done in the past, which is trying to let the public know what we've been doing. So I think those boil down to the key decision points sequentially of when a mailer is appropriate, given the messages are very different. But having the funding, I think you're all hearing the group hug of having that funding is really important to what we've talked about over the past several months.
Yeah, I think today we shouldn't probably get bogged down in what we're going to put in this mailer. I do think it is important that the mailer go out no later than March, because if it goes to every single household address in Palm Springs, after March, people have left. So I think we have plenty of time, that's 3 months, with the communication committee to figure out what's going to be said. But I would like to make sure that it goes out in March, and that way the money is spent and allocated during this fiscal year, and it's not something that drags on, which, as Dr. Reddy knows, we've talked about this for several years. So I think setting ourselves a deadline of 3 months from now is a good thing to do. So I would like to move that we accept move the $15,000 from the audit into the communication budget, and that it be allocated for a citywide mailer to go out during March of 2020.
I'll second. So all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
So if I can just, as a final comment on that, just to make sure this gets moving, we get our public information officer, Amy, involved, but to the extent, I presume you want to have an outside company potentially do this professionally, and obviously they'd be working at your direction, so I'll get you all the staff support, but I will make sure that we start getting those meetings scheduled. I don't know if you want it with a subcommittee or you want to do it all in this forum at your next meeting, but I want to make sure I get that started. So I'll work with whatever subcommittee you have.
You could, you could work with a
We have a
subcommittee.
communications subcommittee. We also have the community outreach subcommittee, which was the ones who were tasked with determining whether and when we want to ask for community input. So I think they would have to be in coordination with both of that, right?
Well, I would think that the communication committee could, begin to work on it. And if there is going to be some sort of quote call to action, a column or a half a page can be allocated to that, and that other committee can then work on whatever that's going to say. I don't know that the communication committee needs to wait for the particular little message, whatever the message is going to be crafted. But I would think that your committee could work on crafting whatever specific or non-specific you want to be, bring that to us, and we can sort of say, yeah, that's great, And then we kind of already have something that we did for 1PS, and we can sort of then tweak that for the rest of the thing and just go to a designer and say, well, it's going to, we have $15,000, and how much is this going, it has to go to everybody, and so we need X amount of, I don't know how many households and all of the kinds of things like that, but that would be helpful from Amy or someone from the city to tell us, we don't know exactly, then they can sort of say, well, you have 2 pages or 3 pages or whatever it can be.
Commissioner Lass.
Following up on what Commissioner Gray said, I think there are kind of two missions here, and they're related, but they're not quite the same. Presumably for community outreach, it's to develop with city staff kind of a channel for the input and a way to process it, understand it, and bring it to this group in a reasonable form. That process, I would assume, could be, and I would argue should be, going on parallel to developing this. Getting the information in the mailer is the easy part. The difficult part is actually developing a process. Because as I understand it, last time there was a lot of moving parts and it didn't work as well as it could. So we probably learned some lessons there about how we can do that more effectively. But I would suggest, I don't think, at least for discussion, that the communication committee kind of work on the content and the design, and the outreach group work with city staff to develop a methodology for taking in these suggestions and defining how we process them, and then put those two things together, sometime towards the end of the first quarter. If that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So then, my goal then to deliver for you is, I think, working with this subcommittee on the messages for your next meeting, maybe we'll be able to actually have a draft for the full commission to take a look at. And then that'll get us started.
And ideally, we're looking at just a single-page flyer, correct? Something kind of glossy?
It could either be a newsletter type thing, multi-page, or it could be a letter with a couple pages too. But again, it's.
And not being on the subcommittee, I just caution away from being too busy. People don't read. They tend to not. So I think big and bold and go from there.
One of the things on this one is
sorry.
they have pictures, which I think is useful to show some of the, the buildings and
Yes.
specific
Yes.
efforts.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Again, a lot more numbers in here because it went to PS1 than we would do. I presume that this idea of having, illustrations of some of the projects, everybody loves charts and graphs and maps and, pictures.
Yeah.
So this might be a starting point, but again, with some professional advice, I think we can probably go a lot further in terms of a more effective communication. But at least personally, I think the idea of a bifold might be, something glossy that people will hopefully pay attention to.
Yeah, I agree.
Would be a good thing. Also, you've probably seen, it's sort of going around, I believe. And I don't know, Dr. Reddy, I think it went to your office as well. Those are the medallions that have been ordered. And I come prepared with hardware that should be to us in about 2 to 3 weeks. So they've been ordered. That is, I think, the actual size, and they can be mounted in the sides of buildings or fountains. They could be placed in a sidewalk. Although the other thing that we did with, and I'll pass this around as well, with the money allocated by the city council, is followed up on an idea that we've been discussing, given the fact that Measure J has been funding, restoration and replacement of sidewalks, that, again, maybe we go for something that is reusable, relatively inexpensive, and long-lasting. And so this is one of those. So if anybody wants to look at that, we can. You have to read backwards. So if you have a mirror handy, you'll get it. But it's pretty straightforward stuff. I mean, it says City of Palm Springs, of course, and then a Measure J project and the year.
So that would be like for cement, in the cement, and sugar cookies.
Very large sugar cookies, yes.
Okay.
And again, the date is replaceable, so as the years pass, we can continue to use it, and we can update the date as needed. And once everybody's seen it, I will leave that with the engineering staff, because I know you've been waiting.
Maybe we can have Mayor Kors do the first stamp at the next sidewalk, a sidewalk stamping.
So we do have a sidewalk project going on right now, so that would be appropriate, and we might be able to do that.
Could we do it at
Excellent.
Sunny Dunes, or are they done?
Sunny Dunes is finished,
Okay.
Robusto is finished, Motto is finished.
Wow,
So they're moving really fast and their quality of work, we're very happy with. So
okay, yeah, it looks fantastic.
There is a few more sidewalks
Okay,
to go.
Right.
Aren't there a few corners on Palm Canyon that aren't finished yet?
On Racket Club,
No, I meant
Oh.
where they're doing the conversion work. There's a few places that
yeah.
seem like they're little gaps that they're filling in.
There-
So maybe it could be done on one of those, I don't know.
Yeah, different contractor, but now
Okay.
that we have it,
Okay.
we
Right.
can,
One other
Cool.
sort of point of interest is, in addition to the medallions, the design that you have there, there is also if we should decide at any point we would like to place a medallion on an existing project, there is a special drill bit that you can use on existing concrete to retrofit and place one of the medallions. So we have that as well, and basically all you need is a big drill and some quickcrete to fasten it. So those should be with us, as I said, in 2 to 3 weeks. And I think that's all we have from the Communications Committee, unless there's anything else.
Then, before I leave, Mr. Chairman, if there's one item I could leave you with as a policy matter that you could potentially think about for your next meeting. Measure J actually expires in 10 years, 12 years?
12 years.
12 years. It was a general discussion from a couple council members had opened the door to the idea of potentially the renewal of that, maybe in the 2020 election. Now, it would have to be a city election. 2020 will be election, also 2021 will be election. But obviously, this is kind of a longer process. So we're starting the new year. It's possible that it could be on the November ballot. And to get something on the November ballot, you have essentially till about August to make that decision. So I think council would be open to that discussion. So I throw that out to you, Mr. Chairman, and members, because if you put this on your next agenda to start the discussion, whatever analysis we need to do to get you to have that discussion, and then ultimately you can make a recommendation to council when you think might be best to take that to the voters. So I throw that out for your thinking, and council would appreciate your recommendation on that. Okay. It'd be a big issue.
is there another election we would have,
We're having a special city election next year because of the district, and then there would be another one in '21. So it could be the next 2 years.
2022, wouldn't it be?
Oh, that's right, even, so,
yeah, they're trying to. get
yes,
even.
2020.
But it's 12 years away from expiring, but do we want this approved a certain length
Well,
of years?
yes, because the sooner the better, because then you obviously
Can
can
budget and prepare.
budget out further, and potentially you could use that for bonding purposes.
Okay, okay.
isn't it start 2011 or 2012 for 25 years? So we're talking 30,
37.
we're talking it expires in 2037?
No, I don't think it's that far off.
No, I don't think it's that far. So we'll find out for sure.
Yeah,
But it
I'd
gives
like
you
to
the
find
ability
out
to
how,
bond it.
when it really expires, and then I'm not good at tax and, about votes, and, is there some data on, how soon before it expires you would bring it back to the voters? I mean, if it's more than 10 years away, it seems like it's a little too soon to bring it to the voters, but I don't really know, and I would like somebody who's done elections to give us some advice. So maybe the city could just tell us when it's really going to expire, and then if there's somebody we could talk to about other examples of taxes that have been then voted on again by the voters. It just seems
Yeah,
it
it was
might
a
be too
20-year.
far.
It was a 20-year, and we're about
I
7
thought it was
years in.
25 years.
Yeah.
It says here that it went into effect April the 12th, 2012, and it's effective for 25 years.
Well, there you have it then. That's,
So that's
2037.
that's too far out.
might be.
Yeah.
What time frame would you recommend it be extended to? Another 25 years?
Indefinite. So if it's that, if that's where we're going with it, then you could do it soon. I mean, then the time frame is less. It's going to expire soon. So the idea would be it's going to be permanent, and with that permanent, then you have it for long-term projects, budget, bonding, et cetera, things of that nature. So,
But right now, it's
Yeah.
2037, so we're a long ways away.
Refresh my memory. This tax is only on tourism, correct?
no, it's
Or
sales
it's on
tax. It's sales
city-
tax.
City.
It's all sales
It's
tax.
a
That is
1%
all
sales
sales
tax.
Everything in the
Except for
city.
groceries and pharmacy,
Medications.
I believe. Right.
Medicine.
Anything that has sales tax.
Yes.
1%.
Okay, and so that's what's going to be taxed. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I presume there are actually, and I know you're out of time, there are actually two things here to consider. I mean, one is, if we're going to do this, we want it to pass, of course, so timing is important and sequencing and all that. But the other issue is, as we look at some of the projects that are on our plate, the library immediately comes to mind, the ability and the available bonding capability that the commission has would also be a factor. So presumably, we have to look at both of those things.
But we have 17 fiscal years ahead of us.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
The way bonding
Commissioner-
works, though, is they work on 30-year horizons.
Yeah. Commissioner Robin?
As a tag along to Commissioner Lass's points and really Commissioner Gray's points, that it seems that the projected duration of a Measure J as a funding mechanism, creating the opportunity for a bond issuing, really ties back to the number of projects that the city contends with, which are just beyond the annual funding. And if there are enough of these very deep holes of projects that can't be supported in a single year, I imagine the proceeds of a bond allow the city to get projects completed that with current annual funding just aren't realistic. And I think that would, if I'm describing it properly, that becomes a really meaningful way of looking at what's feasible for Measure J funds as they are today versus what they could be if there were a successful bond issuance in 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll stay tuned.
Sure. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you for your
Oh, I also
time.
note, the Measure J plaque is up at the fire station number 4 on Laverne. It looks pretty good.
Excellent. Merry Christmas. All right, we'll go to the staff report. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
So, as part of the packet, we provided the unfunded projects, and I think it would be appropriate to talk about those now. And then I also have a request for funding using unscheduled capital for the roundabout. So we were requested to provide the list, and I have. So I'm wondering if the commission wants to talk about each one of the projects right now, or has the commission had enough time to review them, to be able to discuss them? So I'm kind of open to that. As far as projects that are ongoing right now, the downtown park is hot and heavy, and we're starting to break stuff and move dirt around, so we're really getting going on the park, so that's good. So I'm open to any questions, discussion on the 13 unscheduled, unfunded projects that you have before you.
And this is what we're looking at as we move this list towards May.
Correct.
I'm surprised it's not longer.
I have a few questions.
Yes, I
So-
think we'll have a lot of questions.
So first, it seems that a lot of these are just, they're all carryover things. And I think there's a couple things that I would look at breaking down. So there's four of them that all have to do with Parks and Recreation. And they've made, the Parks and Recreation Commission has made known that they have a lot of requests. I think it would be, one idea would maybe to ask them, out of their new requests along with these, what are they prioritizing? Because there may have been, since these were originally put on the list, they may have something now that they think is more important. And we may want to determine what a total budget is or review the projects, but I'm not sure. I know the timing is difficult because these have already been researched, but it would seem, if they've asked for, whatever it is, pickleball courts for $2.5 million, I don't know that we want to go ahead and approve that if they would rather spend it on something else now. So that was one point. The other point is with the fire station expansion and renovation, there's a current discussion between the fire and the arena about what funding they may want to provide. So I think with that, the question might be, is there another alternative source, or do we want to wait for that? And then the third question I had on the roundabout was whether there are potentially other options for grants, like there was with the two-way conversion. I think you were asking just for the design
Correct.
part here.
Correct.
But part of that I would say, what is available with grants? And the question is, if you get a grant and we front the money for the design, can that then be given back and used for something else? So those are my questions.
Okay, so I can speak a little bit to the grants. From my experience, usually grants are not retroactive. If you've already spent the money, you can use that money to apply for the grant, saying we're putting in $100,000 or $300,000 to apply for the grant and get money as a matching fund. So to that question, to that point, we probably will not get the money back to Measure J for the design. The design is going to be able to have it shelf ready, which also helps us with grants. And matching funds helps with grants. So I think that is the intent of requesting the funds today, to get our consultant moving. They've done a lot of, they put a lot of thought into the roundabout and worked on the downtown, the two-way conversion, sorry. So that's the purpose of asking for the money today.
The pickleball courts, they're talking about between the library and the Boys and Girls Club, right? But until the library knows what they're doing, and there's a whole overview of the park, I find this premature, because that's, my wish would be a second building there, an addendum to our original library. So I find this needs to be part of that whole process of looking what's happening in the library and what's happening behind and how we're going to move traffic through that. I think it's a big project before.
Those
This
are
would be
valid
this-
points.
Pardon?
Those are valid points.
Yeah, I'd love to have pickleball because people love pickleball, but not there right now, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with all the sentiment so far. I'm actually surprised this list, although dollar volume is quite hefty, which obviously we can't come close to covering. I expected to maybe see more in the 2 million and under range, kind of like what we've had in the years past. It's kind of a short list, and some of it, are just really big ticket items. We've talked about that Ramon storm drain, and I know it's important, but it's 8 million, and that pretty much takes our budget. I'm not going to reiterate. I think with parks, I would like to go back to the Parks Commission, because I don't even see in here I thought they were also requesting restrooms at certain parks. I don't see that. To me, that's more important than pickleball in Sunrise Park. You know, and could it be even cheaper to do additional pickleball if that is something that's a hot topic, to add more courts at Demuth? Because that's become sort of the pickleball center of Palm Springs. So as maybe a quick fix, because I agree with Linda that this whole library plan, they're looking at a much bigger plan of that whole, including that whole park. I hate to just, I think it's premature. I'll open it up. I would just like to, if there's, I'm just surprised there's not more. There's got to be more, I would think.
You want, kind of answering some of his questions, but
Sure.
the other thing is we asked all the different departments, what projects do you want? And they're kind of working under the old system and, like how we used to do it. We did not convey your sentiment that we heard at the last meeting, about smaller projects or partial funding or just all of that kind of stuff. We just kind of threw out the wide net. We didn't hear any changes. These are unfunded projects, so a lot of the stuff that was already approved for funding has been taken off of the unfunded list. So these are just projects that don't have any kind of funding at all. If they were already approved by either council or this body or whatever for Measure J funds, they were taken off the unfunded list. And so that's why it got smaller.
Sure.
But I think, and then the other thing that's different is that we brought to you the projects earlier so that you can do things like go to a Parks and Rec Commission. Or if you remember last year, we went at 100 miles per hour, at the last minute, and then it was just like, vote, and then put the list together. And
Right.
then,
So part of.
No.
yeah.
I agree with all of that. I would have to.
Trying to.
I would just like to go back and look at last year's list because it seemed like it was really long. So
Yeah. It's about
basically,
23, yeah.
so a lot of those other projects actually found funding then?
Yes.
Wow,
Yes,
that's
they're
amazing.
on your list, right? You can see here, a lot of the ones that are on your list here were part of the list last year. So on the finances,
On finances report?
right.
Yeah, but there's.
Right. So that's, the thing is, we narrowed it down to projects that have been around for a while, still require funding, and still would like to move forward, but opening it up to the commission to see if by putting together a subcommittee to discuss all these projects with the individual departments to see if the priorities have changed. We did cast the net, as Don had said, and I believe most people understood that they still have all these projects out there, that they didn't want to add more because these projects have still been unfunded for quite a while. So I think we need to go through the discussion and then start delivering on some of these projects. We are trying to deliver the projects that already have been approved, and those are becoming numerous as well. So that's
Well, and
part of the
I want
whole.
us to look at what we think, again, we need to know what's a priority for you guys too as we dive into this. And we have to be realistic about what we think council is going to approve and go for. If bathrooms in the parks was a priority, obviously no one has come to, it doesn't seem like anyone has come to you to get a
But that's already been
budget.
approved.
Yeah, we
That's
budgeted
already been
last
approved.
year.
Right.
Those
The
are
bathroom.
New bathrooms.
So,
bathroom renovation repair.
Right, right.
$1.6 million.
Yeah, but but there was a request for, those are existing. There was a request for actual restrooms to be built at different parks that have nothing.
right. So the,
Specifically, James suggested
But-
they were asking.
right,
for-
those
Yeah, and I don't
requests
know, and I just don't know how important that was. It's brought to us, but
Right.
if Parks and Rec didn't bring it to you to actually look at what would it cost and add it to this list.
I think Parks
Maybe
and
it's-
Recs has come forward to ask for the funds to add those new restrooms. I don't think it's taken the form as a capital project just yet. I
Okay.
think they were looking to work on the $1 million community projects as part of that funding. So it hasn't taken
Right.
the form of a capital project. Now, if the subcommittee that is formed works with the parks and it's determined that those smaller restrooms can become a capital project, then we would put it on the list.
Yeah, and I think
then
that was kind
evaluate
of
that.
where we were leaning when we discussed it last month, that some of these projects are, even, there was the safety issue on Ramon, and doing a study on that for kind of the next
Right,
series of
right, and-
safety,
Yeah, I
you know,
can speak to that a
crosswalks.
little bit because that hasn't developed. Until that develops into
Sure.
a tangible project, it's not going to get on this
But
list.
there's so much, they're way more than $1 million. And of course, we can combine years, but I was looking forward to maybe seeing them on this list because we might have a better chance of getting them approved if it's a $3 million project on an unfunded list and also get council's blessing that it could move forward as opposed to us not being able to do it because it's more than our million, or we would have to allocate the next 3 years of community projects for one, bathroom, construction project. So, Commissioner Craig.
I want to ask you, on the downtown safety bollards,
Yes.
is this the section where they're now they fill up the white plastic things every week because of the original design that went in didn't work?
So the downtown safety bollards is the phase 2 of the project. The ones that we're going to call them did not work, those are going to be replaced with functioning bollards. So right now they're temporarily using the barricades again, but once those are replaced, we have a supplier working on the fix and manufacturing the bollards that will work in their current location.
Is there a guesstimation when that's going to be?
We've been pushing the supplier very hard, and we haven't gotten the commitment to be able to give you a good, confident answer.
Because right now on Thursdays at Village Fest, people start pulling in to get to their spaces at 4:30 because they set up at 5. They start at 5 is the green light, and they've put besides the white plastic which they're filling up with water, and they have the tank. They have cones almost all the way to Tokowitz, narrowing it to one lane of traffic. It's backed up. It's the vendors can't get in, the public can't get through. I see it because I'm there on Thursdays. It is a real problem right now, and that's why I'm concerned because people are yelling at people, the traffic, people getting out of cars, and it's become a real fiasco there. Is it something you think in the next 6 months, 5 months?
I would venture to say in the next 6 months, the old bollards, the non-functioning bollards that were installed will be removed and replaced with functioning bollards. They're going to be a manual. We tried to doing a retractable bollard that could pop up. That failed. The mechanism were just not there. We are going to now put actually removable bollards that can be inserted into the same slot. So it's a different design, but it will be working. And from the information I've gotten from the manufacturer, within the next 6 months, those should be supplied and deployed. So that's about as much confidence as I have in the manufacturer right
Because
now.
you're on the air. Thank you.
Phase 2, so what is the location then for phase 2 then that's listed here for 900?
Oh, I'm sorry?
The downtown safety bollards? You
Right.
said this was phase 2 then? Is there so this is a different location?
Correct. I don't have the map in front of me, but the description does tell you for areas
Oh,
where.
I'm
we're-
sorry. You
yeah.
know what yeah, that's right. There is a description here.
So the description doesn't really go into locations because they're scattered. I can provide a map if you'd like.
No, that's fine. Okay. So they're on Palm Canyon. Okay. So the new ones unfortunately will not be the automatic pop-ups anymore because of the vibration. I know with the brick pavers, that was a big issue as well.
So the brick pavers, yeah, and a lot of it had to do with, I'm not going to call it false advertising, but the intent of the deployment of the retractable bollards was to be in a basically traveled area, but
Yeah.
I think it really is for maybe a parking lot where they don't have traveled lanes and they just have maybe occasional.
Yeah, that's it.
So, but the consistent pounding of a tire on a mechanism that holds these bollards destroyed them, and they weren't able to make them work. So.
Yeah. And we don't need those just randomly popping up. All right. I'm sorry. Commissioner Lass.
I just wanted to follow up on this sewer thing on Ramon. Has Measure J been approached to finance this kind of sewer
It's a storm drain.
storm drains before? Is this a new?
I think this storm drain line has been on Measure J.
No, I mean, but have there been any projects like this that have ever been funded by Measure J before?
I don't recall seeing a storm drain line being funded by Measure J on any of the lists. I know I've seen the
'Cause I
list
know over
multiple
the last
times.
10
but-
years, there's been a lot of work done in that regard, and I'm just wondering how that got paid for, and if there are other sources of
So the-
funding for this?
I'm not certain if you know that Riverside County Flood Control District controls the infrastructure for floods here in the city of Palm Springs. So our funding source for major projects, anything above 24 inches, is Riverside County Flood Control.
Okay, but they
So-
don't cover this kind of thing.
Well, they should, but they also have their funding issues
Right.
throughout the entire Riverside County, and the money allocated for Palm Springs, or the Area 6, as they call it, Zone 6. They have to fund it using the available money, but that available money goes to disaster relief first. So the February 14 storms took significant amounts of funding, so
Right.
we're
Yeah.
So is this on their list?
Well, I think that, I guess Ramon and Faro is a known flooding area.
Right.
And waiting for the county to do a project has been, the communities said loud and clear that we want this done quicker. And then especially after the big storm, we need a place to put that water. And so we need to build a storm drain.
Right.
So I think we're just putting it out there, whether it's capital projects, whether it's Measure J, right now it's unfunded. And however the city comes up to pay for it, I think as a community, we want it done a lot quicker than the county can.
So I'll give you a little bit more of information on the storm drain line. The infrastructure in Palm Springs is virtually less than 30% complete of required storm drain lines based on the master storm drainage plan that we have, master drainage plan that we have. So this storm drain line 20 is on the request for funding for Riverside County Flood. And when they get to it is a question. And if Measure J funds it, or we get the funding from a different source, that money that would have come to line 20 will go to line 13 or other lines that are needed within the city.
Okay, so we're not foregoing,
No,
County
there's
money.
money, there's a lot of money that's needed to actually build our infrastructure up.
okay, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the descriptions. That really clarified for me. And when I look at the list, the things that come to mind first are public safety things. That Ramon is a highly traveled road. You got kids in that area. And having lived here a long time, when the roads go out, as they have, you have serious problems getting people there. Would you talk a little bit about the generators? And you have one at the shelter and in the library, and that to me appears to be important. When that all goes down, we have problems.
But
And I'm curious why Phase 2, because I thought that was resolved last year.
Last year was phase 1 that got approved.
for the design, to
Oh, that
obtain the
was
design.
just
That's
design?
strictly design.
For the generator? Oh, I thought it
Well, I
was.
thought it was including the generators.
No, the funding was all strictly for design. We only got,
A 1.15 million. So that was for everything. Yeah.
so maybe I missed
And
that.
so what wasn't included
No, that's true.
in phase 1 was the animal
I mean,
shelter.
I even think council thought that generators were included in that.
Yeah,
that's
there
what
was
we
some
thought.
discussion about it.
Yeah.
I believe the design phase started off, Joel, at 150,000.
Right, that's what I had in my head.
And they increased
1
it,
million.
they thought the importance of it, they added $1 million.
Right.
Okay, that's
And
right. I-
presumably with the library up in the air, the idea of putting a generator into a building that's likely to be significantly changed is probably with
Not-
further
not-
discussion.
right.
All right, so
Yep.
can we clarify then? So we have got 1.15 million already
Yes.
allocated for emergency generators.
Right.
So we need additional then?
Yeah, these were building facilities that weren't a part of the,
I thought the library was included in that.
Pavilion, Palm Springs Public
Don't
Library.
they-
I need
I swore
to, I
I
need
thought
to
there was
clarify. I need
library,
to,
animal shelter, the pavilion.
right, I need to look back at this. I might have misunderstood what I was
Yeah, we
looking
had a whole
at.
discussion about
Yeah.
that when we went
Yeah.
through it. Before we went to the
So
council.
I think
you could be right. I think-
before we do a deep dive in all of this, I think as a commission, obviously you brought to our attention to a lot of materials regarding this roundabout, so I want to hear about that and, you know, the why and how important it
Was
is.
there? I just missed it.
So just
and
confirm
then-
it was the exact same locations last year.
It's what that?
It is funded.
Yeah, I missed it.
It's funded.
Yeah.
All right, so we can cross it off. So,
Which one, Jim?
The generator.
The emergency generator.
Number 3 is funded.
Okay.
all right, go ahead, Commissioner Gray.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk today about 4 things that are on this requested unfunded list that are from Parks and Rec, as well as some things that that have already been funded from this current fiscal year. Is there a way that the Parks and Recreation Commission could we somehow get on their agenda that somebody from Measure J, I guess we have a committee, meet with that commission and find out, here are 4 things that are currently unfunded, here are things that we've already funded. We have heard X, Y, Z from the general public or people from your commission over the last umpteen meetings. Could you please prioritize what it is you wish to have done over the next 3 years? Because it's too difficult for us to make this decision when they just sort of come and talk to us, and I don't, you know, there's 5 commissioners giving us different things. You know, somebody wanted a pickleball court in Ruth Hardy, somebody wanted this, so I'm a little confused. I know that we did this with the Board of Trustees for the library, and I think we need to do with Parks and Rec. If they're bringing things via their department to you, that's great, but I would like the commission to sort of take a step and go to their department heads or whoever they need to deal with and work with to find out what the procedures are and what they really need. And then we can go from there. And
Commissioner-
secondly, I think anything that is asked about Sunrise Park needs to be part of whatever the master plan is going to be that Dr. Reddy has referred to, along with the library. And I don't want to put any money into a building or change anything in the park until a master plan has been done, even though it does impact Parks and Rec. And I assume that doing a master plan with Parks and Rec, with Sunrise, would include talking to stakeholders at Mizell, talking to the baseball tenant, whoever that person is, the Powerball people, as well as, you know, the library and the Boys and Girls Club and the community center and the skate park and all those other things. Some of those are city functions, but some of them are tenants in that park, and I think that they need to be part of that. That's.
Commissioner Bernstein.
Yeah, I think, I agree, and it's what we said in the beginning, that the Parks and Rec should choose their own priorities and see what's on here as well as what they brought to us. I think anything that Dr. Reddy talked about, having a master plan design, at least for Sunrise Park, and I would think that would almost put everything there on hold until that's done. And once you do that, you sort of have, most of these things are sort of all in limbo until we have those 2 things done. And all we're left with are a couple major ones that I'm not sure we're ready to do.
Yeah, I agree. Ariana, how could we communicate with them? I don't know who their chair is exactly.
Les
Is
Young.
it all listed?
Les Young.
Is it Les Young?
Yeah.
And,
Did it change?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Alan is.
Okay.
Alan came to the last meeting. I'm the former chair of Parks and Rec. I'd like to be on the subcommittee.
okay, well, I don't know that we need a subcommittee per se, but it would be at least a meeting with them
Well, that's what I
outside of this. And I would like to be a part of that too.
I can reach out to them. I do have a number here.
I mean, I've got
Yeah.
Alan's contact
Alan.
information, so I can reach out and maybe they can put together a group.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to violate Brown Act, so it would have to be only 4 of us from our team, probably 4 from their team. We could find a date to get together. But I would like them to at least prepare, even before meeting with us, a little bit of their priority. I'm a little leery on Sunrise Park because that's kind of a major design element. I would think that would have to go almost, I don't know. I don't think one commission can just make that determination. And I think that's a public matter as well. I think some people might disagree with it and some might be for it. But that's a huge thing, especially when all of that's all up in the air right now.
But I think that's their commission. I don't think we need people to go there. As a commission, they need to prioritize their list and then have a spokesman bring that to us. That's how we have done it on other commissions. And, that's more time for you to go to their meeting. They just need to get the message, to take a look at what you want, prioritize it, and then Major J will take a look at it. That's within house for them.
Right.
Don't you think?
Well,
First?
yeah, I agree with that to some degree. But and maybe we can advise them on some things. I don't know. I don't know where this Sunrise Park thing is rooted out of. I think some of it is.
It was several years ago. Jim, why
Yeah, no, yeah, it's Commissioner Craig.
There seems to be some confusion here. At 2 meetings ago, I brought up the fact, and Marcus said absolutely what happened. Christine came to the Measure J and said, we'd like to hear what you guys would like to do. Would you put together a report and come and speak to us? Ellen came, they spoke. The commission listened to all the people, lots of people were here with suggestions, and the Measure J Commission voted to give it to 2, the police department and $2 million for the Sunrise Park from Measure J. There was a caveat put on it by a commissioner at that time who said, unless we need that $2 million to give to the downtown park. Am I right so far?
Yeah, but that's years
Right.
ago.
No, that was 2 years ago when the money was pulled back. They did have a plan for Sunrise Park. That's what they brought here. Now, we're hearing today from Dr. Reddy that about a master plan talking about the other company. They should be brought in to that discussion, in my opinion, to see about what their plans were, whether it's Rios or whoever it is, to say, yeah, these are some good ideas, or these are not. But the Measure J had agreed to give them the $2 million over a period of 2 years to do their plans for the Sunrise Park because of the problems with the needles, et cetera, all the issues that were going on at that time. And the money was pulled back. And 2 months ago, we heard 4 of them come here and speak, starting with Alan, and then Ellen, and then David Cohan, spoke about the different things they wanted to bring to us. Primarily, they were talking about the bathrooms, I think, at that time.
Well, and that's the thing. It seems like their priority changed because Sunrise Park
They knew- I
only
think
came
they
up
knew
at the
that
very
$2 million
end.
was never coming back.
Probably, well,
for
maybe,
that idea.
but it didn't seem. It seemed it seemed lowered on their priority list. And
right.
again, I can't speak for that commission.
Yeah, but you're
But
right. That was the primary.
again, there's so many stakeholders in Sunrise Park. I just don't want to get muddled down in that. I just think that's not something for us to look at. That's something that I can guarantee council will not approve.
Yeah, but-
Because of the library as a stakeholder. There's just so much at play that I just don't think is going to happen within the next 4 months.
When they asked for it, that was prior to all of the things that have gone on with the library. I mean, they couldn't predict that. The subcommittee and the big "where are we going to be" committee, that has definitely changed. I mean, that's no more in play. And I always think there's a field in the back that nobody uses very much. But I think they came to you in good faith. But the game has really changed, and they didn't know
So,
that.
as a suggestion, would it be possible for staff to forward the list that we currently have directly to the Director of Parks and Rec, and then she has a direct line to the Parks and Recs.
And
Commission.
is
And
she
maybe
in those
would-
meetings?
Yeah, she is in those meetings, and we can have reevaluate whatever their priorities are now,
Yes.
using the list that we have.
And just
then
question
that can-
mark-
That can come back through me to the commission.
Yeah.
Maybe we update the list according to the new desires, and maybe we work closely with them to develop a new scope of what the projects should be, without involving all the committees.
No, I think that's a good idea, because I'm, and with question marks, where's the bathroom construction that they brought up? If I recall too, about 2 years ago, there was a huge need for a new gym floor at the Jesse O. James Center.
Yeah,
Where?
Number 8.
Number 8.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, sorry, I saw the JOJ,
Yeah.
didn't put that together.
So,
So Jim?
Yeah, so I would,
Okay.
yeah, it would be
So-
great to
so
see that
this
from them.
list, we're not asking you to bless it. I think it's just our
No,
starting.
no, it's a starting
It's our
point. Oh,
starting
yeah.
point for our discussions, and, I heard a lot of good feedback that we can take back. I mean, I didn't hear from all of you, but, if you do want smaller projects on the list, like in the $50,000 to $200,000 range, we can go back to our staff and seek out those types of projects. If you want partial funded projects, like just the design coming from Measure J, we could, just based off of your feedback, so we could get a direction, so that we can prepare the final list before the May meeting, right?
Right.
And so this is all good discussion. I think I'm getting more and more a sense of the kinds of things that are important to this commission. And so, yeah, I just want
And I
to-
guess, I think we just want to see more in
Okay.
general. I don't mind seeing what's here,
Okay.
but I feel like there's got to be more.
Okay.
It seems like there's so many needs in this city, and in fact, I want to say the last time I saw something, it was like a total of like $200 million it would take to do everything that the city needs done. Not that we need to see all of that, and maybe not really tiny projects that might easily get funded through other sources, but, and again, something that, and things that are important to wherever it comes from within staff too. Because we value what your input is and what the city looks at as important. And we did that last year, I thought very successfully, as a collaboration, and it was rewarded by a unanimous vote from council. So that's kind of what we're going for here.
Yeah, just to reiterate, Parks and Rec, I think they affect the whole city because of a lot of parks. And I know that they're having a community meeting about a new dog park. Well, that's not on this list. So if the community's going to go to some meeting and talk about a new dog park, I assume that they're going to come to us and say, we now want this new dog park. So that's the kind of thing that I think the message has to go back to that commission, that these are things that have been on our list for 5 years. Are they still priorities? What are your priorities for the next 3 years? And they can all change because commissioners change and the public changes. And the only caveat is that at this point in time, due to the recent community input about the library, we aren't going to be funding anything in the park until we get a master plan. But other than that, I think we're open to hearing anything that they bring forward.
Commissioner Lass?
Just real quickly, one of the things that I think might be worthwhile to also bring up with them is the idea of shade in the parks. If you look at all the playgrounds of the schools, they all have shade structures. And there's very little shade, especially in the children's play areas. And it wouldn't be hugely expensive. Talk about high visibility kinds of things the community would react to, where you're not spending $2 million. It's just an idea, but I think it would be very well received.
I think Parks and Rec, they own more buildings in the city than anybody, I think, and they're all old and dilapidated, and they all need to be redone. I think so. We'll hear from them forever and ever and ever, and rightly so, to ask for funding for their infrastructure all over the city, and new parks, but the old parks are in terrible shape. So,
So if I can just sum up what I think we've all said, I think the whole parks, we want to go back to the Director of Parks and talk to the commission about what they want as priorities. In terms of anything with the library, I think last year we gave them a little bit of money just depending on what they do, and I think at this point, there's not going to be any plan within the next year. I think in terms of the roundabout, the design phase may make sense, but I wouldn't even consider the $2 million until that's actually done. And I think with these other things is the question we'd ask to go back is, what other potential sources of funding are they and how likely are they? There was excellent information on the storm drain, but I don't know about the fire station or these other major tickets, what the other options are if it's not us. And I think it would be helpful to have that information before we even sort of deliberate on whether we want to spend Measure J funds on it.
I agree. Commissioner Robin?
We've covered a lot of ground. I'd just like to underscore one point, Don, that you made, and then ask a question for the next round. As you create the second round, consider clustering these based on the theme. Yes, is it safety-oriented, transportation-oriented, energy conservation-oriented, mission-critical-oriented, and using whatever vernacular works for you, and we can work from that. And the other, just to underscore what you suggested, I think having bite-sized projects on the list is really important because they get obliterated when we go elephant hunting for the bigger projects, which means easily half of the list, if not more, just never sees light of day unless it survives through a community project phase. But otherwise, great. This is a great start for us. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? So are we discussing the roundabout at all, or are we tabling that, or?
We can discuss it. The request still stands for
And this was
funding.
just, in this, 2 million is just for design phase?
No, the design phase, we're asking for exactly $236,000 from unscheduled capital funds.
And then, so what is the 2 million? Is that the entire project?
2 million would be the cost of construction.
I'll just take a visual here. Do we discuss this today, or?
Well,
Weigh
there's
in?
two requests. One is the 2 million for construction, and then the special request for the design. They're two different things.
Can I ask a question?
Correct?
Do we have the option of approving a design fund just right now out of unscheduled funds?
Yes.
So that's what the request is. Do
Right.
we want to
Okay.
approve 236,000 today
Correct.
for a design so that it can at least move forward, separate apart from the whole annual budget?
Right, I can give you a little bit of background. I'm not certain that everybody knows about the roundabout or,
Yeah, I'd like to hear rationale for why it's so important. I can read the paragraph, but anything you can do to
So just,
underscore that would be helpful.
just the visual on item 4, page 4 of 14, if you see the intersection itself, it's a 5-legged intersection, and the design, we asked Webb, this has been ongoing for a while now, we asked them to design the Indian Two-Way and to then look at the intersection of South Palm Canyon, Indian Canyon, and Paracela. And what Webb analyzed the intersection and decided that it could probably continue with a traffic signal, but it does become a very complicated traffic signal, and it's not as safe as a roundabout. A roundabout for an awkwardly designed intersection that's coming in at different angles makes a lot of sense. So a roundabout can actually provide more safety, traffic movement, and allows for, if accidents occur, they occur at a lower speed so that they're more survivable than an accident at an intersection such as this, which is 5-legged. And from that, the previous staff at the city worked with Webb and Associates to come up with different designs, different ways to make a roundabout happen at this intersection. And you saw several of the exhibits here that show several possibilities. Figure 3 was, I think, one of the first iterations of the roundabout. It's kind of complicated, it looks complicated, and I think they moved from figure 3 to figure 5, which is a little bit more of a traditional more oblong, but more traditional roundabout, where all the intersections are. Essentially with the roundabout, what you're trying to do is get traffic to head into the direction of the median, the middle center curve, to slow down as a visual, and then they start making their turn. So you're really trying to slow down traffic with the design of a roundabout. And this last iteration on figure 6 is, I guess, roundabout technology and design is moving every year. They're kind of upgrading and finding ways to make them safer. So the very last iteration is one of the most, more modern, closer to a more modern roundabout, which is not as long and oblong as the other 2 previous iterations of the roundabout.
I lived in England for 15 years, so I've been around thousands of these things. And I have to say that figure 6, by far, is advantageous compared to all the rest. The simpler, the more straightforward, the better traffic flows.
Right.
And I also note that I think we've got 5 new light poles on on that intersection. Hopefully, if we were to do something like this, they can be repurposed.
Right,
because
most of those traffic.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, those poles will be stored, if a project like this were to take place, the poles do get reused. We do store them and we use them because knockdowns occur and we use the poles. They are repurposed.
These things, it takes a little getting used to, I'll grant you that. But I've seen it time and time again where what would have been a T-bone here is a fender bender or a scrape. And especially on a complicated intersection like this, I mean, I use that intersection. I see people cutting across in strange and creative ways. It's amazing there aren't more accidents than there are. So I certainly like the idea. And I guess if the commission is interested in doing the study and design, I certainly would find that worthwhile personally.
And I will apologize, I'm not a roundabout expert and I'm not a traffic design engineer. We do hire these folks to help us out. So if there's any questions you have right now that I'm not able to answer, we'll definitely get back to you.
I have one question.
Go ahead. I'm curious if there was any preliminary to the extent that there was a traffic analysis already on this and the benefits of case A versus base case versus an alternative case. Was there any forecasting of what the accident reduction would be, or the nomenclature of traffic land, as opposed to the perceivable, as Commissioner Last described, of a collision is a lesser collision. Right. The outcome is a lesser outcome, a more humane outcome.
So, go ahead.
No, I believe the preliminary studies was that, they look at the accident history for the past 5 or 10 years when they applied for the grants. And I think it was the serious nature of, there were some serious injuries in those accidents. So, like he said, because now everybody is turning, you're moving at a slower speed. And so that's the difference between surviving that T-bone versus the scrapes and fender benders. So, yeah.
For this particular situation, I think Webb was analyzing truly circulation more than accident data. And when we would go to the accident data would be when we're actually going for the grant to construct it. And we are going to look for money to do it, but Measure J would help with funding of that if we can't get the grants to do the construction.
But what I read in the applications, they were looking at not only vehicle safety, but vehicle to pedestrian safety, vehicle to bicycle safety, all those different modes of transportation converging at this intersection, felt that something like a roundabout would help all modes of transportation. So that's kind of the history of how this developed.
If you have no lights here, how, I can understand what the cars are doing. How are you moving people across that? Because
So the better picture for movement of people is figure 5. Not that's the better design, but it shows truly where the folks will be crossing at all the intersections. And it's going to take a similar form.
So you're a little further down the road there.
But no lights.
No
But
lights,
no light. Wow.
Correct.
Okay, so you're hoping straight traffic that doesn't go on the roundabout, that's coming on through Plum Canyon, is going to stop when they see somebody in there.
The design of the roundabout is to force the traffic to slow down and stop and be able to visually see
that.
see the pedestrian crossing. Yeah, unfortunately, Figure 6 is not developed fully to be able to really appreciate what it would do for the pedestrians or for the bicyclists.
But yeah, usually what it does is it orientates the driver to look in the direction of somebody that wants to cross.
Or vice versa, you get the pedestrian looking towards
traffic.
where the
Traffic.
traffic is coming before you actually move across.
And just so you know, basically, everyone has to yield before they come into the circular
That's
traffic.
true. Yeah. Camino Paracela was not always an open roadway, right?
I'm not sure
You
certain
don't
of the
know?
history, no.
It was, I don't want to belabor it. No, it wasn't. You couldn't go down that
Can I ask,
road.
can I ask a quick question, then Senator Craig, or Commissioner Craig?
I'll take that.
Senator Craig.
I'm watching too much,
I'd love to be.
too many hearings. So that left-hand turn from Palm Canyon to Indian Canyon as it exists today, obviously that's going away because it would head-on collision to the new direction. So regardless, light or no light, that's gone. But you're still, if we go to traffic lights, you're still allowing a left-hand turn on, and can they do a sharp left-hand onto Indian Canyon?
All the way around.
You had to go in the circle.
No, I'm not talking with the circles, I'm talking figure 2. If we go with the traditional stoplights,
That's what it is now.
That's what the configuration is going to be.
right,
The configuration that.
no, the configuration now,
No, that's
Is all they that-
No, they redid that.
oh, okay.
So it's this.
It kind of looks like.
I just haven't noticed it when I driven by. So you would be able to do a sharp left and go on to Indian. Or you could turn even and do a soft left on Paracela. So I'm just curious if there's been a study showing would the lights add more congestion? Would the circle make, would that, because you're slowing everybody down?
I
would
think the
that
premise of the study
confuse?
of how we got as how Webb analyzed was traffic circulation and moving the traffic in a more what's the word I'm looking for here? Efficiently, yeah, exactly.
Commissioner Craig.
I wanted to say, Commissioner Lass, I totally agree with what you're saying. If you go out Jefferson during Coachella, they have a turnaround like this. And you're absolutely right. Everybody slows down. It just keeps moving. If you're coming off of Jefferson and you want to get over to Highway 50, you'll pass this one, you'll pass that one, and the third turn, you go on, and it all slows down. And there's no lights. And it does work. And that, I've seen it during heavy Coachella, where there's a lot of traffic.
Commissioner Bernstein.
I say, I mean, the city's already had a study that has shown that this makes sense. So, I mean, if we want to doubt the study, we can, but it seems to me that they already know it makes sense, they just don't have the funding to do it. And what they're asking us today is, will we approve $236,000 and change for the funding of a design, which they've also said is necessary in order to try and get grants to actually fund it. So I would move that we approve the $236,000 for the design, and we put on hold any approval for the actual funding of the roundabout until they've used that to get grants.
Okay, do we have a second? Craig, Commissioner Craig?
Just one question. I just think that the pedestrian traffic is just so important, because right now, at least when you're going to cross that street, and I've crossed that, and I've really relied on the lights for my safety, and so whatever we, say that they can get for the study, I really hope they emphasize pedestrians, because relying on cars to stop because they're slowing down, I think, as fools are, and especially at night when you can't see anything anyways. So
Right.
I think an emphasis should be placed upon the pedestrian
Well,
traffic.
one of the things that I can do is work with our consultants to look for enhanced features for crosswalks. There are methods of highlighting crosswalks, either picking them up so that cars can actually go up and over, or putting in-ground lights. So there's treatments that could be done at each one of these crosswalks, but that we won't be able to fully establish what those treatments would be until we get into the design phase of the project.
Okay, so we have,
Could I have one more question? Presumably, the design phase and coming up with a specific design would be important in applying for other grants and, stuff from the county or the state. Is that something we would logically do with the design?
Once the design is complete, correct. We would use the matching funds, and two, the completed, what we call shovel-ready plans to move to apply for those grants, and they would help. They definitely are a good benefit to. There's active transportation grants. There's other grants that we could apply for, congestion mitigation grants. Those all look for what the city has already done and how far you're advanced in your design or in your thought process for what you're applying for. So, yeah.
Thank you.
and I like the consistency too of maybe using crosswalk lights in the pavement, because we do it already in other parts of the city. People will start to get used to seeing that. Hopefully they'll stop. Commissioner Gray.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that in our packet, if you read it, that the proposal from Webb is included, and it has 58 things they're going to do in this study. So I think all of these things we've been asking about have already been addressed in the proposal that was brought to the city, and so I would, I don't guess we need to second, we just need to sort of vote, call the question. But I think all of our questions are really here. It just, rather than asking again and again, it's all here.
And
Right, but
some
I'm always
people
happy
don't-
to
Yeah,
I've
and
worked
people
with-
can ask questions,
Right.
Commissioner Gray, and some
Right.
don't have time to read all of this because they're busy.
No, and we're more than, I've dealt with, I've
We
constructed
do
a
have
few
a motion on the
roundabouts.
floor for a vote, so let's vote. All in favor, pardon? There was a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Great. All right, anything else for staff?
Our next meeting. Date.
That's coming up in the agenda. I don't know if I need a motion for this, but can we continue discussion on potential? Do we want to discuss this old business topic on 5A? I thought that was something that was maybe falling into the outreach subcommittee. Okay, so let's move beyond that. Is that okay for everyone? And let's go to new business. We've already had our communication subcommittee update. Do we have a library subcommittee update? Nothing new? And outreach for community projects subcommittee? I'm not on that one.
We haven't.
I thought it was Naomi and.
Naomi, Mr. and Craig, you and I. And we haven't met, but you did send us something from the engineer, sort of a protocol for process. We're talking about process, right? How to apply for the small grants. We haven't met, and if Dr. Reddy needs a little bit of information for the pamphlet, I think we should meet or set a date that's convenient to all of us. What do you think, Craig?
Fine.
To talk about it. And then, did we get the protocol list from you?
I mean, feel free to change it. It's just, it
But
was,
it's a
it
good
was
start.
starting
It's a
point
good
of
start.
what past commissions have used as their
So
evaluation.
we need direction. Ms. Soto is not here, but that's all I have to say. We need to meet, and that takes a process. So if you could help us a little bit, and
that's
then
fine.
see what we can do maybe after the holidays, quick like a bunny. Okay.
Great, and then we had some calendar things to look at here for future meetings.
Well, I would prefer May 14th and September 24th. My reasoning is that the 28th becomes very close to Memorial Day.
Yep, I agree.
And I think also the more time that we have to prepare, that staff has to prepare in the summer before our first September meeting makes more sense.
And people could be gone on the 10th, still, it's so close to summer.
What did you say, Mr.
The 14th and the 24th.
If you want, we can go in order.
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
14th and 24th.
Commissioner Craig,
Same.
I agree.
same.
Fine with me.
That's fine.
Yes.
That was quick. All right. Okay. Time for public comment. I don't believe we have anyone from the public. Any last-minute staff member comments?
Just one on, I know for some, after so many pages, it's kind of hard to print at home. So if you ever need a copy, hard copies mailed out to you, please let me know. If it exceeds a certain amount of pages, I'll be happy to overnight you a copy. Or you guys can always stop by and say hi and pick one up.
Even better.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any commissioner member comments? Happy holidays, everybody. We are adjourned. Thank you.